One of my viewers asked a question, and here it is. But a problem I keep running into is trying to bring in my far out and supernatural and unbelievable scenarios without coming off corny or losing my idea while trying to make it believable. Also, integrating my characters into these ideas occasionally poses a challenge. Okay, I think I know exactly what this question is about. Speaking to you from beautiful Philadelphia. Because I write alternate reality fiction, I deal with this kind of problem a lot. How do we make the supernatural, the super real, the fantastic, the beyond belief believable? Let's face corniness first. Okay, when we're writing, let's say supernatural fiction, and it seems corny, what is that? What is corniness? Corniness, like a B flick, is underdeveloped fiction. This is one of those concepts a writer should be very clear-minded about, very consciously aware of. Because a concept like corniness, as innocent seeming as it may be, I predict might actually stop a lot of people from writing very enjoyable fiction. When we use a concept like corniness for our own work, we're looking at new ideas that may be great, but instead of looking at them as asking us to further develop and clarify these fictional ideas, the concept of corniness is telling us that the ideas are not so great, that they're actually silly instead of profound. That when you look at your own fiction and your subconscious is telling you that it's corny, look at it very much as buried treasure. You know, there are great ideas in there, but it just needs some more work to turn them into the useful ideas they can be turned into. I dealt a little bit with this in a recent video where I talked about the TV miniseries Martian Chronicles from the Ray Bradbury book, and I talked about how corny it seemed that, oh, there was this great mission to Mars, and in the movie, when they were there, it looked like they were walking around a campground. They had like tents, and they were, you know, campfire, they were brewing their coffee, and that seemed totally corny to me, because our understanding of missions to other planets are so much more in-depth and real seeming to us today. So when you're reading over what you've written and a little buzzer goes off and the word corny lights up and your subconscious is telling you that your writing seems kind of corny, look at that as your subconscious is recognizing that there is something that is not, that there is something missing, or there is something that seems artificial, but you haven't verbalized it yet. Your subconscious has not exactly figured out what is missing or what seems artificial about your writing, but that it just seems somehow that way. I think this is one of the reasons people get writer's block when their subconscious tells them their writing is corny. This is something that shuts them down rather than eggs them on and gives them the energy to take that writing to the next stage. Think of your new work of fiction as like a new creature and treat it with care. If you found a baby bird, would you say, it can't fly, it doesn't fly correctly, throw it out the window? That would be a totally unrealistic way of recognizing that new creature. recognize it as potential. It has in it what will become that creature of flight. It just needs a little bit more care. It needs a little bit more attention paid to it. It needs you to put some patience into developing it more. When Mary Shelley was first developing the idea of Frankenstein, I would be willing to bet that there was a good degree of corniness. Corniness is the first stages of a story when it is just beginning to be developed. You, as the conscious part of yourself, your job is to know that part of your story is corny. Look at it and just acknowledge to yourself, that seems corny, that character seems silly or artificial somehow. And just know consciously that you would like to improve that somehow. Your subconscious will hear it. Your job as the conscious part of yourself is to be like the magnifying glass on certain parts of your story, to zoom in on parts that need focus and say, that part somehow seems corny. And know that you're not just saying that to your conscious self, you're also saying that to your subconscious self. And when you do that, your subconscious will start working on it and will later on deliver to you new options. Do not reject the corniness or silliness in your writing. Don't shut yourself down. Accept it, recognize that when ideas are new and for the first time on the page, that is how they appear, because what corniness is underdeveloped. And if we enjoy living with our stories in their underdeveloped stage, we're going to enjoy watching them gradually become more and more mind-blowingly realistic seeming. To be a writer, it's a lot more than patience. Dostoevsky spent over 10 years on one book. It is about learning to be obsessed with the stage your story is currently at. After you complete first draft, a certain part of you, let a certain part of yourself enjoy the story as it is. Don't discount it. Don't say, it'll never amount to anything. Try to see in it, enjoy it for its potential. Writing a work of fiction is like having your very own virtual reality video game. Now, if you've ever played a virtual reality video game, it's like a place that you can enjoy going to. But the reason it's different in this case is that every time you enjoy going to that alternate reality, it's going to improve, it's going to get a little better, it's going to seem a little more real. So if you think parts of your story are corny, that's a good thing. That means that you're going to be able to tune in to how to improve your story. If your fiction deals outside of what we think of as reality, the supernatural, alternate realities, fictional ages, you know, the Middle Earth, all the different genres, vampires, it's a great idea to spend extra effort on the behind the scenes, the philosophy of that other reality, to make sure you have a very solid idea of exactly what the rules are of that other reality and why it works. One of my all-time favorite horror films, Ju-on, The Grudge, the original Japanese version. The special effects are not incredible, but it's the philosophy behind the story. Their sense of the supernatural ghost reality is so dead-on strong. It's written from this understanding of what the afterlife could be like to such an advanced level of feelings about what it could be like, that it informs what happens in that movie to a point where it's one of the scariest, most convincing films I've seen. So this gets into the advice that you really want to do a great deal of work outside of the actual story you're working on. You want to draw maps, you want to do research, you want to develop the backstory. After the author of Dune passed away, they found all this backstory, and it was enough to go and publish several more books about Dune. There was more work on the backstory of his Dune series than what actually was in the book. Orwell, he invented new forms of language. A story creator is very much like the Wizard of Oz. You know, the Wizard of Oz hides behind the curtain and creates this fantastical, you know, can create these fantastical illusions for people, but no one really knows what's going on. To create your story behind what you don't reveal, if you have so much more understanding of where your characters come from, and it isn't a matter of what kind of research you should do. It isn't a matter of what kind of maps you should draw, but that you should spend as much time as possible in this virtual reality you're creating that is where your story is going to take place. So how much should you develop your characters? The more that you have the feeling that you can actually spend time with the characters in the story, the more that you have the feeling that you can actually go and visit that other reality, the more that you learn to actually enjoy doing that, the more real seeming your story is going to become. I've been working on an illustrated fiction that, if put into book form, I estimate would be about 7 books long. And I've been working on it for many years. And what actually takes place in the story has so drastically changed that that if you look at it, you could say in a way it isn't even the same story at all, even though it very much is. My point is that I've been willing to take out actual events in the story and put in whole brand new ones to get more at what is essentially the story behind the story. If you've written the first draft, you have done the hardest part. From here on out, it's gliding. It's going to be a blast, because now you have this whole foundation to play off of, and all you need to do is to go and enjoy that virtual reality and make little improvements here and there and watch the true picture of that story eventually develop. And just try not to worry about it so much. Yes, enjoy the discipline of gradually improving a story. On the other hand, we want to believe. Your readers will want to suspend their own disbelief to enjoy the story. We all know vampires don't exist and can still kind of forget that we don't believe in that at all to feel like we're really there and feel that those monsters really do exist. You know, where 90% of the iceberg is under the ocean, and the tip of the iceberg, it's the only visible part. And the reason that's one of my favorite power dynamic scenarios is because that's exactly what writing is like, is where we have this imagined virtual reality, and that story is just a glimpse. We spend most of our time in our imagination creating for our own enjoyment this other world, and then what becomes the story is just a one-time tour that we other humans, we invite them in on this one-time tour, but there are so many hallways they'll never be able to go down that we get to go down. There are so many backways and what is around that corner and what's inside that window. We know, we've been there, but in our story, it's just you start at the entrance, you follow the line, and you leave at the exit, and that's all everyone else gets, even though we get so much more. Try to be more flexible about your writing. If something about it seems kind of corny, just before you make a change, say, what if this happens instead of that happens? A lot of the times, this is a point of discovery. The options, there are these amazing options that we haven't discovered yet, and if we think we might have started to get an idea about a change that would completely improve the story, but we don't quite have it yet, this is a great point. Learn to enjoy this, because this is the situation where a writer is like an explorer and discovering great new stories that have never been created before. I mean, most of us love the idea of the eureka moment, and working with a corny story is a setup to have a eureka moment, because if we know that there's something that needs adjustment and we haven't quite found it yet, and half a year later we haven't quite found it yet, all of a sudden our subconscious will be working on it and hand it to you, and it'll be like, of course, and you know that this is the part of the story that is truly original and delights you and is like this never before devised way of a story playing out. There's a lot I haven't covered, because really the strategy of writing supernatural or alternate reality fiction is a lot about, you know, the strategy of suspending disbelief. I would suggest that do an online search for how to suspend disbelief, or study film. Look at how different fantasy films have, you know, like now we're living in a tradition of filmmaking where it's the handheld, because, you know, you have these movies that look like homemade documentaries about fantastical monsters and supernatural, and it's because of the way it's filmed that they make the fictional story seem more real. So there's no end to the strategy, and that is the strategy, to make the super real seem real. I haven't even scratched the surface. Think about stories that leave it open to interpretation. Donnie Darko, the original, not the remix. This is a film that when it came out, people knew something wasn't going on. It was left open to interpretation, so everyone had to kind of figure out, you know. And we're talking about a story where someone in a bunny rabbit suit shows up, and it's still it definitely suspends disbelief. And its strategy is leaving the supernatural, or leaving the super real, open to interpretation. I hope this has been helpful. If you like my videos and want to get me back, please hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, tell a friend, or you could be a great help if you share this link through Twitter, Facebook, various ways of sharing YouTube videos. I have a link below to t-shirts. Any t-shirt you buy from my Solimation t-shirt site will go toward the making of the illustrated story I'm working on, Terrible Immunity, at solomation.com. I hope your writing goes great. More importantly, I hope you thoroughly enjoy that virtual reality that you're imagining into existence. I hope that it provides for you hours and hours and hours of enjoyment, and out of it you create a story that will be a great enjoyment for other people. I hope your writing goes well, and have a good day.